Hey, today guys, I'm going to do a remote installation, something I've never done before. I'm going to build just about everything right here in the shop, and I'm going to package all this stuff up, send it to the other location a couple thousand miles away, figure out how to reassemble it with very few tools, and install it on a wall. So let's get started. Two things were certain on this project. I was on a tight budget and I needed some thick wood and I needed a lot of it. I found this poplar at a great price point. It was exactly what I was looking for, and I think it's going to be a great fit for this project. You see, I'm using aluminum rods to hold the wine bottles on display, and I want to drill over 100 holes in this wood to be able to hold those rods, and it has to be secure. We're talking about expensive wine here, so I can't make any mistakes. I can't be chintzy on it. I gotta make sure it's gonna work well. The other challenge of this project is I have to ship all this wood to its final location. So these pieces that were 6.5 feet long, I had to cut in half, and I have to figure out how to glue them back together to make sure this thing looks like a nice work of art. It was a little bit of a challenge, but once I got everything cut, I was ready to ship this wood on its way. Now let's face it, we all build jigs. I have a number of jigs that I've built. They're all over the shop. I've saved them. My crosscut sled is probably my favorite jig. I use that all the time. But here, I needed to build something to drill these holes that I was going to use for 120 holes, and then I'm going to throw it away. So I wanted it to be accurate. I want it to be good and solid. But when I'm done with it, it's going in the trash. As I said before, I have to break down these 6.5 foot lengths. I can't ship that stuff. So I had to figure out a way to cut these and then put them back together on site. I tried a number of different methods, and biscuit joining seemed to be the easiest thing to do, and it was actually a lot more solid than I thought. It was time to test out this jig that I built. And as you can see, I wanted to do two sets together because these are going to be basically bookends to hold these aluminum rods. It's got to be accurate. It's got to be aligned. I've got to have the right spacing, and I can't make a mistake because I don't have any more wood. It worked out well. I got all 120 holes drilled. The depth wasn't quite right, so I had to go back and clean those up, but I was happy with the end result. We'll just have to see if it looks good when I put it together. All that was left was to sand this and package it to ship it. I used 3 different levels of sandpaper to get a nice smooth finish on this. And then I packaged it to ship it. I found some cheap packaging and I put it in a travel golf bag carrier. How many videos have you seen where they use a golf carrier to transport their wood? It was a first for me, and it's probably a first for you, but it actually did the job. I could actually fit tools and ship my wood that I needed to have on site. Did I say I was on a tight budget? Yeah, I did. And I needed a lot of aluminum tubing. This was my foundation for my wine wall, and it was just way too expensive to hire somebody to cut these things to length and clean them up. So I did it myself. I found a great deal locally, and it was actually a lot cheaper than the location where I was going to do the assembly. So I used my welding table, which happens to be plywood, and yes, it does burn when I use it. But I used my welding table to cut these things to length. Made a very simple, yes, another jig, and was able to clean these up, package them, and ship them to their final destination. The customer gave me the dimensions of the wall. I needed that to be able to design this wine wall. I basically shipped everything with me except for the plywood. That would be almost impossible. I had the plywood cut at a big box store, and then it was just a matter of putting everything together. But I wanted to start by kind of laying out these two panels and see if they even fit. I know I've measured twice and cut once, but I wanted to make sure it was going to fit on the wall, and so I kind of roughed it out to try to get that aligned and see what it was going to look like. Now, if the risk of shipping all this stuff wasn't enough of a risk and having it lost or damaged, finding studs was another risk that I had to deal with. I wanted studs behind these panels. This is holding quality, expensive wine, and I don't want to have any problems. I was fortunate, very fortunate, to find two good solid studs behind each of the two panels. And I ended up bolting cleats into these studs to make sure that it would effectively hold these walls. Well, as I said before, doing a remote installation is something that I've never done before. So I brought all my own hardware, the bolts, the washers, the screws, everything. And I could match up all the drill bits for that hardware in my shop, put them in a box, ship them with the golf travel bag, and hope they make it. And yeah, they did. So that just saved me a lot of time, made it a lot easier for me, and it worked out really good. Now, getting the first set of cleats in place, as I said before, was really important because I wanted both panels to be perfectly level and perfectly aligned with each other. With the second and third set of cleats, I could make some minor adjustments in alignment, but not a lot. So I wanted to get all three sets done. And in fact, the only mistake that I made is I did 2 sets of cleats in the shop, not 3. So the third set's a little bit bigger. But hey, it worked out okay. Okay guys, home stretch. Now I had to put these 6.5 foot pieces that I painfully cut in half to ship. I had to put them back together again. And these two, obviously, I didn't cut. They're different grains. You can see that. But the other 3 were perfectly matched. And I made, once again, a very, very simple gluing jig to glue these together. But man, this thing worked out great. I was able to put a end piece on the end of the board. And these 2 clamps, I could really wrench down on these boards and glued them together, and it turned out really good. This was a great setup to be able to glue these, and very simple. Didn't involve really a lot of anything. The customer finally selected a color to stain this wood. They picked the ebony color, which, yeah, it was kind of a recommendation on my part as well. But it really makes the aluminum rods pop, and you'll see that in the final video of this. And now it's just a matter of putting this whole thing together. I had notched out the side pieces to cover the plywood so you don't see the ends of the plywood when it's assembled. And yeah, it just gave it a really nice look. I've got all the cleats installed on the back of the plywood, and now it's a matter of gluing and screwing these side pieces on. Again, I'm holding a lot of wine, 30 bottles of wine on each panel. I want to make sure these things are built solid. I put these little pieces of blue tape in place to make sure that I wouldn't drill into any of these holes for the rods. Could you imagine if I did that? That would have been a real mess. So just got this one side finished, and then I had to flip it over and install the aluminum rods on the other side. That turned out to be a little bit more of a challenge than I thought. Putting the rods in was a really tight fit because I had used a nice 1/2-inch Forstner bit for the 1/2-inch rods. I actually had to tap these in with a hammer to make sure I got them fully seated. And then on the opposite side, I was ready to put the other side piece on. And here I needed a little help from my assistant because I angled the piece out and started putting each rod in and kind of worked my way down. As I got some of it done, I would clamp it in place and continue to go, flip it over, put the screws in, and I'm done. Well, I really think it turned out well. I've got that lighting on the back of the panels, that ebony stain in those rods holds 60 bottles of wine in a nice displayed fashion. I'm really happy with the final result, and so is the customer. Really, thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed, I've got some great stuff coming up. And if you liked the video, I would appreciate it if you hit like. See you guys next time.
Smile.